I think that venture is not an objective, industry. It's not something that's just based on the numbers. It is largely and in many ways a human driven industry, and it's a human driven investment that you're making.
Welcome to Founded and Funded. I'm Coral Varnick-Duckin, the digital editor here at Madrona. Today I've got the pleasure of interviewing Madrona partner Vivek Ramaswami for the latest in our Investor Spotlight mini-series. So these Investor Spotlight discussions are all about diving into what drives our investors and what they look for in founders. First, though, a little bit of background on you, Vivek. You joined Madrona in 2022 at our new Bay Area office, coming most recently from Steadfast, where you helped launch the venture capital arm there. And you were at Redpoint Ventures before that. But if we go back a little bit, you started your career at Goldman Sachs, working in investment banking. Oftentimes, going the business school route and starting your career at Goldman leads more to the private equity and hedge fund route in terms of a career. So what made you take the dive into venture capital instead?
I was pretty lucky, I think, from a timing perspective because I joined Goldman as a summer intern in 2012. Facebook had just gone public and there was a lot of excitement around early growth stage companies and private sector tech companies. And so when I came back in 2013, full-time at Goldman after I graduated college, I was just exposed in San Francisco to so many amazing, high-flying businesses. And a lot of my friends and people who were around me were building companies. You go to coffee shops in San Francisco and people were hacking away and building really interesting things. And there's just a lot of excitement in early and growth stage tech companies. And me as a non-engineer or someone who's coming from the finance background, I'm like, well, it's not like I'm going to just drop everything and go start a company because I had no skill set to do that. But I felt like, hey, I want to stay in finance and I want to stay on the investing side, but I'm more interested in companies and founders and early and growth stage companies. And so when I kind of went through some of the rounds with the private equity, which a lot of my peers and analysts at Goldman and other investment banks went that route or hedge fund route, I just felt that it was way more exciting and way more in my areas of interest to do something in venture where I could apply the skill set that I learned at Goldman, which is around the financial analysis and those kinds of things, with the passion of learning more about new markets and entrepreneurs and founders who are building really incredible companies.
Well, that's the perfect segue into, obviously in venture, you're talking with so many founders. You get approached, I'm sure, just constantly by people with great ideas. What are you looking for when you're evaluating these founders and teams that approach you?
I feel like there isn't one set of traits that every founder has, right? Every founder is very different and founders come from different backgrounds and they approach problems differently. But I think that at the core of it, no matter what you're building, if it's a software company, if it's an ag tech company, if it's a space company, you have to have some passion and drive for why you're solving the problem. Because otherwise, it's a really, really, really tough path you're going down. This isn't an industry in which you just, there's quick, easy path to riches. It's a slog. And there's going to be times where things are really, really tough. And I've seen this with a lot of the founders that I've worked with in the past and continue to work with is things can get really dark and heavy at times. But if you are super passionate and have drive for what you're building and ultimately the value you're delivering for your customers, that is what helps get you through. And then I think on top of that, it's all the other things, right? It's being able to build a team and get a team to help you ultimately drive towards your mission. So all the things that go around recruiting and team building are super important for a founder CEO, especially as they go from the initial founder phase to becoming more of an executive and building a team and going from an early stage startup to a growth startup and beyond. I think all of those things can be done. And I've seen founders and CEOs achieve that in different ways. But again, it's very hard to do if you don't have that initial passion and drive for building the company and finding value for your customers.
When you're evaluating and talking to these founders, trying to weed out, the ones that are they passionate enough? Do they have that passion? Is there anything that you're looking for as kind of the proof that, okay, this person has it, they're passionate enough?
Yeah, this is why I think that venture is not an objective, industry, it's not something that's just based on the numbers. It is largely and in many ways a human driven industry, and it's a human driven investment that you're making. And so I think that this is something that comes through in conversations over the course of time. Sometimes you might see it initially in the first meeting, right? Where a founder comes in and say, hey, I've been thinking about this problem since I was 5 years old. And, this is something that's kept them up for nights and weeks forever. And some folks, it's a new problem. And both of those founders and both of those teams can be successful. It's just coming at it in different ways. And that's why I do think spending time with founders and entrepreneurs as they're building their companies and as they're thinking about, here's the obstacles I have to think about. Here are the challenges I'm going to face, but here's how I'm going to get through it. I think having those conversations early and as we chat with folks is really, really important, because I think it does come through not only in the conversation. Sometimes it's hey, you can just feel the passion on the other side of the table. And sometimes you can, because that's just not how that person operates. But over the course of conversations, you find out, hey, they've thought about, these 5 things I've never even thought about in this market. They have gone through the really hard part of having 30 customer conversations or talking to 50 developers or looking at the 30 other competitors that have tried this in the space, and they've thought through it day and night. And then here's why they think that there's an opportunity to build a new solution in this space. Those are all the ways it comes through, right? So it's not just, the first conversation I have with somebody. It can come through over multiple conversations. It come through over years of building a relationship. But when you see someone who's done that hard work and has thought about the space that they're going into and the opportunity they have to build a really big and interesting company, I think those are the things that when you hear it, it's like, okay, this person has passion and drive, and they're going to get through those really tough nights ahead to fulfill the mission that they have at hand.
When you're talking to and evaluating these founders and founding teams, is there any sector that you're particularly interested in?
Yeah, so I've focused on software broadly for my career in venture over the last 8 years. When I started my venture career, it was still very much in the midst of this massive shift from on-prem to cloud. And we were working with and investing in companies that built cloud native products and developer first products like Twilio and HashiCorp and Sentinel-1 and a number of others. And that shift is still very much ongoing. And so it was really fun and has been fun to invest behind those trends over the last 7 or 8 years. And that enterprise software continues to be a major focus of mine, both application data infrastructure. I'd say what's obviously really fun and exciting now is it's hard to escape anything to do with artificial intelligence and especially generative AI. I was lucky and had fortunate timing to join Madrona a couple of months before ChatGPT was released. And the firm had already been investing behind these trends for a number of years, but really doubled down our focus. And I think my first week here was during our IA summit or around that time period. And it was like, okay, this is cool. This is fun to join in the midst of another massive platform shift that's happening and that's very real. And so, as you know, Coral, pretty much every conversation we have internally at the firm and with companies we speak to is about generative AI and AI. So it's hard to escape that topic. At the same time, what I would say, especially because my focus tends to be more on our acceleration style companies and acceleration style businesses, which tend to be more, call it, Series B, Series C, post-product market fit, starting to generate a little revenue, is when we talk about AI and talk about generative AI, that's great. It's a technology. But at the end of the day, what value are you delivering for your customers? How does that manifest itself in the actual product and what your customers are seeing, the value you deliver? And maybe my customers don't care that there's AI in the back, or maybe they do. It's different for everybody, but we're building businesses and we're investing in businesses. And I think that's why it's really important to keep that in mind, which is saying we're super excited about what's happening with generative AI and AI and large language models across the board. But for my personal focus, I tend to look at, okay, that's great. Now, how is it applied and why does it matter?
I had forgotten that you started in that time frame, during our IA summit. I love that. And it leads me to one thing, coming from Steadfast and Redpoint, what was it that actually made you want to jump in and start working with Madrona, especially as we were just launching our Bay Area office?
One of the really exciting things was Madrona had for years been investing in great companies and had been known in large parts as a primarily Pacific Northwest early stage investment group. But even prior to Karan and I joining the firm, and made some, fantastic investments like Snowflake and UiPath and others that were outside of the Pacific Northwest, and also in more of this growth sort of Series B, Series C acceleration style stages. What I thought was really exciting about Madrona is here was an opportunity to come in and help lead and open up an effort in the Bay Area with all of the great foundations that Madrona had built in areas that we thought were really exciting, like artificial intelligence and developer tools and modern data infrastructure companies, and basically help take a lot of that goodness and apply it to companies, not just in the Pacific Northwest, but also in the Bay Area, also in the East Coast, really anywhere that they're building. And I think in a venture firm, you end up working with a small group of people that are the ones that you spend a lot of time with every day. And I think for us, a big part of coming to Madrona was being able to join a fantastic group of people, from the investment team to the finance professionals to the folks on the media side to, the portfolio operations and talent. Everybody had both a willingness and a drive to help the founders that we work with, in addition to just being good people that I would want to be around and that would be supportive and helpful. It's been a lot of fun to bring what I can to the table and help continue raising the game at Madrona and being part of the group here.
So wrapping up here, I just have a couple of quick hit questions for you, starting with, what's one or two must-read books that you tend to recommend for founders?
I try and avoid the standard, hard things about hard things kind of recommendations, because not that they're not good books, but that most founders have already read them. I personally enjoy history books and learning about American history, which is ironic because I'm Canadian. But one of the books that I often recommend is a book called Team of Rivals by Goodwin. And what I love about this book is basically about Abraham Lincoln and how he formed his cabinet after the election of 1860, when the Civil War was starting, and how he essentially brought together a bunch of people that were formerly his rivals in the election, right? And folks that didn't see eye to eye with him at all, and people who came from different backgrounds and different skill sets. And what Lincoln was able to do was recognize everyone's strengths and weaknesses and recognize where they could help, and ultimately driving towards a singular mission and a singular objective. And I think in many ways, that is what a founder is doing, especially as they grow into their CEO role and realize that, hey, this isn't a one-person mission. This is something where we're going to have to find and leverage the skills of the team. And people are going to come with different points of views and different backgrounds, and no one is going to see eye to eye and everything, and that's fine. But can you get folks to ultimately consolidate around a single mission and objective? And I think this book is really good and has a lot of fun anecdotes about Lincoln and his team. And I think it's just a great read, but has a lot of interesting lessons to impart on the founder journey as well.
Last question, and it's more just of a kind of get to know you a little bit. What is it that you like to do when you're not working, not in board meetings, not helping founders, which, that's a lot. So what is it that you do to unwind?
Yeah, I try and stay fit. I don't know how well that's going, but I love to run and do some long distance running. It's just a great way to unwind and feel like I get my fitness and kind of get my head out of whatever stress is happening at work or otherwise. I just turned 32, and my girlfriend and I ran a 32 kilometer to celebrate that. So every year I get older, I try and add one more kilometer. And then outside of that, I love exploring, the Bay Area, going up to wine country, all the great food and different things that the Bay Area has to explore. So I'm a big fan of that. And then the last thing is reading. I mentioned the love for history and, try and always find some obscure book about a time period that I've never, really looked into before. And so all those things are fun and a good way to unwind outside of the venture meetings and the board meetings and all of that fun stuff too.
I can't imagine, because I'll be turning 36. I can't imagine going on a 36-kilometer run. I don't actually know what that is in miles, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's about, I guess 32 kilometers, about 20 miles. So 36 is a little bit more than that.
I mean, you're approaching marathon here.
But I guess that's why it's fun. It's just like, you just push yourself and do it to the degree that you can. But I think it's fun because every year it's like, I know it's going to get a little bit harder. So can I do that? Like, that's what makes it fun. So I'm sure at some point it's not going to be possible. Maybe 50 at 50 is not going to be possible, but I'll find something else. Maybe at that point it's, 50 meters instead of 50 kilometers or something like that.
Well, Vivek, it's been really great to get to know you a little bit better. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Investor Spotlight episode of Founded and Funded.
Great. Thanks, Carl. This is awesome.